A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, the secrets of the universe were found in some hitchhiker's guide, and I happen to have that guide. But I'm no guardian of these galaxy dice secrets. I won't leave you hanging. I'll show you how to make some dice that are looking beastie, boys. That is to say, intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic. Every dice maker out there has given their take on galaxy dice, except for me, so I figured I would throw my hat in the ring and try and make the single greatest galaxy D20 that I possibly could. Because my large and small D20 molds had a rip in them recently, it's an excuse to make some new ones. I normally seal my molds up with blue painter's tape, but a lot of people like to do this method where they put them back in the vessel that they make their molds, but I was never able to do that based on how I originally make my sprue molds. Some people even use rubber bands, and those people are crazy. I don't know how you do it. It always deforms my dice. But one of the moderators for my Dice Goblin Discord channel, his name's Durandal Dice, he's told me that there is a better way to do it so that I don't have that problem and I can put them down in the cups using just a few different tools I already have around, like pipettes and popsicle sticks and a hot glue gun. It will make it a hanging style mold, which you can customize a little bit more than just gluing something down to the bottom. And you don't always have to drill down into your dice. However, if you already have drilled dice, they'll work too. So I'm going to take a popsicle stick here and cut it in half just so I don't have to use two different really long popsicle sticks for this. And they're going to sit over our two cups. We're using a red solo cup and a Dixie cup, and we're going to take this pipette here and turn it into a mini little funnel. The end here is a little bit too long. We want it to really just be the funnel part, so I'm going to cut that off and make sure it's really flat on the tip. You can see here how it kind of tapers out to a point, which is fantastic. It's going to have a wider base and a thin tip at the top. That is exactly what we're looking for, and we're going to glue this to both our dice and to the popsicle stick. Before I glue the tip of the pipette down to the popsicle stick, I'm going to show you using the large D20, which is one of my 3D printed masters, that has the toothpick still drilled down into it. That way you can kind of get what we're going to do with the pipette before I put the pipette down. I put a big glob of glue onto the toothpick and the popsicle stick, and then hold the large D20 upside down with the toothpick touching the popsicle stick until the hot glue adheres and cools down. At a certain point, I should be able to let it go, and this thing should be able to stand freely. The important thing is that it can hang upside down, however, because that's how we're going to put this into the cup. When you set it down in the cup, it has a little bit of room to kind of wiggle around and play on the inside of the cup, which is ideal. That way you can get it exactly where you want it. But this is also a good time to see if the height is right. This is where it's going to sit in the mold. So now we're going to do the same thing with the pipette tip. You can see it's a little bit more funneled than the toothpick is because the toothpick is just one straight line. This will help the resin get funneled down into the mold, which is ideal. We're going to be using this other D20, which had its toothpick removed, forcibly or by accident, and we're just going to glue over that hole. If you don't have a hole on your dice, that's actually preferable. I'm trying to get rid of having this hole problem, so I'm going to glue it right onto the tip of the pipette. After trying to do this and holding it there, I realized that's not exactly an easy thing to do. It's far easier to put some hot glue on the tip and then hold the popsicle stick upside down. The popsicle stick is lighter and it won't want to tend to break off. Eventually this will hold itself up onto the face of your die, and you're going to want to cut a little bit of a hole into the pipette tip there. Otherwise there's no way for air to get in, and when you put this in the pressure pot, it will just kind of collapse in on itself. With this setup, the sprue will be on the opposite end of the molds compared to where it normally is with my sprue method, which I will show you the benefits to that here in a minute, but let's go ahead and get working on some silicone. For this one, I'm going to use Sorta Clear 12 because it's sorta clear and I can see through it, and that makes for good YouTube videos. But also, I'm starting to like this stuff more and more over my normal blue stuff. It actually just seems to last a lot longer. So after mixing up part A and part B for about 5 minutes, I pour a little bit down into the bottom of each of the cups, which is a really easy way to set the popsicle sticks down in there kind of at an angle and gently so that you don't get any air bubbles stuck to the numbers on the inside of the die. After you slowly put it in there, then you can begin slowly pouring the silicone in until it reaches the very, very top. You don't have to pour this all the way to the very top as long as you have enough of a sprue coming off of either the pipette or the toothpick or whatever you're using to create the sprue to pour the resin down inside. I'm putting it in the pressure pot at 40 psi overnight. That way they are cured and there's no bubbles in these molds. Then I knock them over and mess up the shot. Do the shot again, and they have no bubbles in them, and they are ready to put some resin down inside. Now we have to take them out of the casings. If you pull it off, some of the pipette might come off. That's not really a big deal. You may have to poke a little hole in the bottom of the red solo cup type molds. If you do, that just kind of helps air get down in there and it makes it a little easier to pull these things out. You can see the silicone is cured. It's super duper clear. You can see my little Dice Goblin logo on the D20 there, and you can see all around. You can see that the funnel down there at the bottom is exactly what we're looking for. It makes it really easy to get a pipette in, and if it's already pipette shaped. Now, normally when I do molds like this, if I'm trying to put them back in the cup, there has to be this hole in the top where you try and put the pipette and the resin back in, but it's really hard to get it super secure up there. It's just not my favorite. I'll show you why this is better here in but a moment, but now we got to get this out of the Dixie cup. The Dixie cup is just toast. You got to go ahead and rip that thing off. For some reason, silicone really likes to stick to it, so it's sacrificial. It does make kind of a cool wood-like pattern with the popsicle stick on top whenever silicone reaches up there. Just thought that was kind of a cool looking shot. Now you might notice we don't really have a reservoir in these molds like we normally do if we're using dice or silicone type putty or clay down in the bottom. That's okay. I'm just going to take an X-Acto knife and go around and make my own little reservoir. This way I can make the reservoir as big or as small as I want, and I don't have to really worry about adjusting the height. I can do it post-curing and really get it whatever size I want. After I cut out for the first little D20 one here, I can go ahead and cut out a reservoir for the larger D20, and I make it a little bit more shallower and wider. That's the benefits of the customization. Now I need to cut the dice actually out of the molds, and just like normal, I try and go right along one of the seam lines of the dice itself, one of the natural ones. The benefits of being able to put these back in their cup vessels where you make the molds is they can really only go in one way, so feel free to cut on one side as far down as you need to get the dice out. Normally you might have to cut on two different sides, which leads to being more seam lines, and a lot of flashing occurs whenever you're putting resin in there, which is resin coming out the sides. You can help prevent that by using the actual vessels that they normally come in. It's just hard to do that with my other method. You can see these are squishy, ready to go, but again, because there's only really one way these things can go back together and fit in the mold, you can just kind of push them right in there pretty easily. I do the same thing that I did on the solo cup and cut a hole out of the bottom, that way air can escape more easily. These things drop in super duper quickly, and it's not a problem at all to get the silicone down in the molds. I will say the Dixie cup is actually far easier than the red solo cup. Because the solo cup has ridges, it doesn't want to go in as easily. The Dixie cup is super nice, and I would actually recommend using it if you're willing to lose a little bit more silicone. But let's get on to the actual dice making, and I'm going to be using Envirotech's light resin. Make sure you're wearing your respirator and gloves for safety, because you should always do that when working with resin, and I'm mixing up equal parts part A and part B. If we're going to go for that galaxy look, I'm thinking blues and purples and a little bit of silver, so I'm going to use my liquid glitter silver additive. You can just use a tiny amount of really fine mica powder or glitter, but I would always recommend mica powder. So I'm just using 2 drops of that stuff and mixing it up with the clear. I separate a tiny amount of it, maybe just 10 milliliters between the 2 dice, and pour some of the purple alcohol ink in there. It wasn't enough, so I pour a little bit more. I'm really going for a dark purple with this stuff here, and I'm going to go ahead and let a pipette start soaking that stuff up. Now, the key to making this look like a cool galaxy is the blue and the purple, so I'm going to go with a blue leafing foil, which is essentially fake foil that's really shiny and really blue. I'm hoping that the blue will play with the purple that I'm going to do in there and kind of create a myriad of colors that are a mix between blue and purple. If you use leafing foil and it looks really thick inside your resin, just mix the hell out of it and it will start breaking apart and get thinner and thinner the longer you mix it. The reason I like using this leafing foil over glitter is you can see it goes up into the pipettes really easily, and because it's so light, it stays suspended. A lot of glitter will like to fall to the bottom and you have to do a lot of stuff to try and fix that, but you don't have to really worry about that stuff here. It travels through the pipette extremely easily. I fill this up maybe about 90% of the way inside the die, and you can see about how tall you're getting in there by the bubble that's kind of slowly making its way up. And then I fill the rest of it with the purple, kind of moving it all around on the inside of the die as I'm injecting purple into this thing. As the purple's getting injected into all of the different corners, I'm hoping it will kind of have a bit of the clear with the blue and a bit with the purple, so you'll be able to see different colors as if they are different layers going down into there. The benefits of this type of mold will really start to shine both in the funnel that you've created instead of using a toothpick, as the resin will naturally want to flow down into the bottom, and because of the super tight seal, you can really inject a lot of resin in there. If you're using tape, it often likes to push the tape off to the side and make its way out. It's not a fun time. If you have any extra resin, throw it in some dump molds, because I always have extra resin, and now I can throw it into the pressure pot, again, 24 hours, and bada bing, bada boom, these molds are done. I have to gush about the Dixie Cup one specifically, because as I turn this thing over, look how easily this mold comes right out of its casing and is ready to go for next time. I was actually, you kind of see I was paused there because I was so blown away at it. The red solo cup one takes about 10 seconds to get out. It's a little bit harder, but even then it's not that bad. But look how easy this Dixie one is to just pop in and out. Highly recommend using Dixie cups for this if you're willing to waste a little bit more silicone. But now we can take a look at the dice, because that's the star of the show. And look at this. It looks like a galaxy full of bats. I'm absolutely super duper into it. That funnel worked fantastically. There was plenty of extra resin to go down into each of the die that I used there, and these molds are fine. They had a perfectly great seal. The Dixie Cup one also, if you'll take a look here, had essentially no flashing on it before I actually pulled the die out of the mold. So happy, no wasted resin, and the giant D20 that I have here looks so good. Now all we have to do is actually take the sprue cutters and cut the sprues off of the end of them. Now we have some flat-sided die, and I'm just going to sand them up with Zona papers, and bada bing bada boom, our dice are ready to be inked. Now I couldn't find a color that I thought was absolutely perfect, so I'm trying two different ones. I'm trying Dragonfly Glaze and some Sapphire Metallic Blue. The paper on the top of these paints is what the paints are supposed to look like. However, as I poured the blue one out, it looks way better than advertised, but the Dragonfly Glaze looks not at all like advertised. It kind of came out white, though I know it will dry clear. It does not at all look like the very tip top of this paint thing. So I was a little upset at that false advertising, but that's okay. Being that I saw the blue look so dang good, I'm going to put it on the jumbo die by just pouring some paint into each of the little numbers, wiping off any excess with my finger, and that's good enough for me. You can always take some alcohol wipes to get any excess paint off of it, but that's looking mighty fine. This metallic blue I highly recommend. Onto the other one, however, as I'm painting this on, it kind of was this galaxy silver looking color, and I was hoping that it would stay that color. However, in the end, once it dries, it actually becomes very clear, and it looks just like a starry field wherever the numbers are. It is not all that great as far as being able to immediately read the numbers. However, it does have this cool effect where you can only really read it if you're directly above it. So if you're a DM who doesn't like using screens, your players can't actually read what you roll from far away, only you'd be able to read it. However, if I'm going for a readable die that I can see at any angle and just looks overall better because of that awesome metallic blue, I gotta say go metal blue with any sort of purpley pink look that you're going for Galaxy. And this is my interpretation of a Galaxy die. I know it doesn't have that kind of swirly Galaxy like some of those art dice makers have, but honestly, I'm really proud of these things. I think they look super cool. And maybe if I ever play a Space Wizard or a Time Cleric, wink, I might make a full set of these, but I just wanted to try a one-off D20 and do the best that I could with it. And hey, I'm proud of the results, and I hope that you're proud and like them as well. Thank you, Durandal, for showing me this awesome kind of change to my normal method. I'll probably end up doing it this way in the future because getting them in and out of their little vessels and not having to use tape every single time is so freaking nice. Thank you everybody so much for watching. This was actually a patron pick video who said they wanted to see this when I talked about a hanging mold, which was hanging the dice inside the molds and getting a slightly different version that makes life a whole lot easier. So if you want, maybe check out my Patreon because we have a lot of cool offerings over there. Or if you want to see some other videos on how to make some other cool dice or other tabletop related things, I got that on my channel, and maybe consider subscribing. Either way, thank you so much for your time today and watching my video. I hope that you stay safe and have an absolutely fantastic day.